welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke,
And I'm Emma.
and this week we're discussing Chapter 8, Ambitions. The epigraph is the fabled circle of magic discussion.
Yes, that keeps coming up in most of our discussions on magic on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But this is it. We're here. We're reading it.
It is a Trini translation of The Circle of Magic by Skillmaster Allclef. And we have had excerpts from Skillmaster Allclef before translated by Trini. But this is a different paper.
Yes. Or I guess it could all be one, but
This one has a separate title, I think, than we've seen before.
that's true. But last epigraph was also Trini's translation. So
Yeah.
So we just heard from him as well.
Thus, every magic has its space in the spectrum of magic, and together they make up the great circle of power. All magical lore is encompassed in this circle, from the skills of the humble hedge wizard with his charms, the scryer with his bowl or crystal, the bestial magic of the wit, and the celestial magic of the skill, and all the homely magics of hearth and heart. All can be placed as I have shown them, in a great spectrum, and it must be clear to any eye that a common thread runs through all of them. But that is not to say that any user can or should attempt to master the full circle of magic. Such a wide sweep of the art is not given to any mortal, and with good reason. No one is meant to be master of all powers. A skill user may expand his expertise to scrying, and there have been tales of beast magickers who had mastered some of the fire magic and water-finding skills of hedge wizards. As illustrated by the chart, each of these lesser arcs of magic are adjacent to the greater magics, and thus a mage can expand his powers to include these minor skills as well. So, before we get into the second half of this epigraph, it kind of talks about what we've talked about, and I think we've attributed it to Chade in the past, which is incorrect.
Yes.
This is a translation of the skill scrolls that I'm sure Chade translated, or, from Trini's translation.
I mean, okay, I could be wrong, but I think in the first trilogy, Chade does mention something about a circle of magic. I think there's
Maybe,
a brief mention. I might be making that up, but I feel like in the first trilogy, there's like one brief one-off line that we touched on.
Okay.
But this is like the spectrum in the circle, the wheel or whatever actually laid out for us. And so, yeah, you're right. This is like the big one.
First of all, Robin Hobb, what do you mean, as I have shown, there is a spectrum of magic? Please let us see that.
Yes.
Don't, gatekeep it with Skillmaster Allclef's scroll here. I want to see all of the magics.
Yes.
2, there's a section in there that they have fire magic and water finding skills of the hedge wizards.
Which, okay, so this is crazy because I don't think either have been touched on in this series, and maybe water finding gets a little bit brought up in the very next trilogy, which is the Rainwild Chronicles. I think there is something that happens with water finding there, but there is no fire magic in any of the books. Maybe in the new trilogy she's supposedly thinking about writing, there will be fire magic, but until then, that means we have one magic that isn't for sure ever talked about, and one that is only maybe brushed past.
And again, we know that there is a short story that does focus on hedge witches and like one of their apprentices that we have not read yet.
That's true.
So let us know if it's mentioned there. We will, again, eventually get around to it, but we have not read through that, so we're just talking the main books at the moment.
Yes, but it is kind of odd to me to have magic talked about that is not ever going to be brought up outside of this. And maybe those magics are dead, potentially. Like
True.
We see
lost arts or skills.
Yeah, like with Burek, he is able to do wit and healing through the wit.
Right.
And so maybe it's something like that is just no more people can do it, and so it's lost, or at least it's rare enough that it is believed to be lost. That could
Right.
be the case.
Yeah.
But I am very sad because I love magic and I want to know more about it. And I love the rules of the magic system and everything about that. So I am sad to be missing out on what could be fire magic. Although water finding magic in real life, I guess it's not really a magic, but there are people who use rods,
Yeah. Dowsing rods.
dowsing rods, which is what I picture when she talks about water finding magic, because outside of wit and skill, like scrying is something that people try to do in the real world, and like I feel like hedge witch stuff is like akin to things that happen in real world, so I'm picturing those as more like having
Yeah.
real world counterpoints.
The other thing here is there is a mention in the list of magics of all the homely magics of hearth and heart. Do you have any idea what that is referencing to, or a clue, or is that just kind of all encompassing all the other tricks that might be out there?
I feel like it's just encompassing every other trick that might
Yeah.
be out there. Why did you have?
No, I didn't. I just found it interesting that they go through all the magics that we know, the wit, the skill, scrying, and hedge wizardry, I guess. And then they also include that line there.
I suppose it could be something to do with like, I guess like a relationship type magic, not like lovey-dovey relationship, turn people into love potion thing. I don't know. More like having relations and like being able to cultivate friendships easily, sort of like with what we see Lodwine do, where he's able to almost charm Fitz with his personability, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's something like that.
Could be. The only thought that I had was of when Fitz relates, like everybody has some small version of the wit, like a mother knows when it's her baby crying kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that is encompassed in the homely magics of hearth and heart.
That could be.
But this author, Skillmaster Ucliffe, definitely has derision for the wit, as we see later on. So maybe he just didn't think that would be a wit thing.
That's true. It is hard too, though, right? Because there's always going to be the bias of your own experience coloring how you see the world.
And how you categorize things.
Yeah. And so if this person only has skill, they're not going to attribute anything like that towards a magic that they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Fitz having both allows him to sort of more clearly see the difference between the two, or like a mix of both, in a way that I think this person is clearly blind to. But I also do, real quick, want to point out that they call the skill a celestial magic.
Yeah.
Which also is a very unique term to use, because that does low-key imply that there are angels, and they are giving the magic
it's related to the sky, I guess, in general. Celestial, or the stars.
Oh, celestial. You're right. I guess I always just think celestial magic is like angels.
Yeah.
They're celestial beings, I guess. So
I always relate it to kind of like the stars or like space kind of thing. And I feel like that can be an apt description when Fitz kind of goes into the river. It's like, oh, there's all these little pinpricks of people I can go to and drift along, you know?
That's fair.
But yeah, definitely heightening the skill up and hyping it up, which makes sense for a skill master for a royal line.
That's true. That's true.
This continues, though, saying to have larger ambitions than these, encompassing the small minor magics next to your major magic, is a great error. For one who augurs through a crystal to attempt to master the bringing of fire is a mistake. These magics are not neighboring magics, and the strains of supporting their differences may bring discord to his mind. For a skill user to demean himself with the beast magic of the wit is to invite the decay and debasement of his higher magic. Such a vile ambition should be condemned. We've talked about how the Circle of Magic before this, in other episodes, the Circle of Magic must be like, oh, it's like dragon magic, but humans can only break it down into certain things, right? We've kind of discussed that theory, or at least dragon magic would have a combination of multiple things.
Right.
And I don't know if we implied it or said it out directly or if this was in my mind, but I feel like we kind of discussed the skill and wit being neighbors in the circle of magic because they share a lot of similarities
Yes.
and you can, communicate and touch minds with different things across that.
Mm-hmm.
Oaklef is directly saying they are not touching. In fact, you should not have both of them because that is stretching across the spectrum of magic and ignoring your neighbors, and that is not good for your mind.
Which,
He implies that there are major magics, and then the small ones next to it are the only ones you can get, or
yes.
should try to get.
Yeah, which I mean could be for a number of reasons. Like maybe he tried to gain wit skill and couldn't figure it out, and so he's mad. Or it could be that he's seen people try both and it hurts them in some way. We also don't know how long ago this was written. It does seem like magics evolve over time.
Right.
So maybe before it would have been a big issue and now it isn't. However, we do see that with Fitz, having both is something that does bring discord to his mind. Maybe not in the way that this person is describing it, but it does stress him out to know that he has both and that they intermingle, and it makes him feel like he's doing something wrong inherently. But is that something that is magically brought about? Is that a feeling that he gets from using the magic that way, or is that from the biases that he has been raised with of
Yeah.
one is this pure magic and the other is tainted, and so you're tainting the purity by using this horrible magic, that beast magic. So it's hard to say, I guess, to me, if that's true, even though we do have a character who uses both and it does sort of bring discord to him.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's too many layers to really, we don't have a clear study. Although I guess we a little bit do with Dutiful because he doesn't seem to mind both magics intermingling. And so maybe it is more of just,
In his head.
yeah, it's in Fitz's head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Either way, we kind of start this chapter, and this is a chapter where a lot of time passes, and Fitz kind of recounts what he has been doing in the meantime of this passage of time here, and it starts by saying, looking back, I learned more from the first lesson than Dutiful did. So obviously, he's writing this from the future and kind of recapping what has been happening during the intermediate time, and Fitz says that he's the one that learned the most and learned that he needs to be more cautious, basically, and he needs to teach himself a lot more. And so he became very, very, very busy over the next, period of time here. He must both be a student and teacher, and yet could not surrender his other roles as Lord Golden's servant or Hap's father or the Farseer's spy. As winter shortened the days, my lessons with Dutiful began in the black of the morning. Usually we left Verity's tower before the true dawn lightened the sky. Both the boy and Chade were eager for us to press on, but I was determined to err on the side of caution after our near disaster. In the same spirit, I had procrastinated against Chade's demands that I at least evaluate Thick's skill ability. And he mentions that Thick is as reluctant as Fitz is to meet up with Fitz at all. Chade keeps trying to arrange those meetings, and Fitz will show up. Thick is not there, but Fitz doesn't linger around to see if he's just going to be late. He just says, oh, Thick's not here, and then leaves.
Yes. So, yeah, Fitz is already sort of clearly in a mood through his writing of this chapter and talking about sort of this struggle of not having enough time. I feel like this is inherently a winter feeling, though, just with the shorter days. It always feels like everything gets away from you during that season.
But even he's saying that their skill lessons happen and finish before dawn.
Yeah. No, for sure. There's a lot happening. But I think it's really interesting because throughout this chapter, there is sort of a tone of, I'm going to say grumpiness. I think that's a little, but like, you can feel how frazzled Fitz is. You can feel how sort of burnt out he's getting. And he's just sort of stretching himself too thin. There's too much going on and he can't be present for all of them. And instead of just picking a few to do well, he's sort of doing all a little bit poorly. But he's trying. He's trying his best. That's my own
Yes.
opinion. That is not what he thinks. Well, that is probably what he thinks, but for different reasons.
Chade is confronts him at one point, demanding, what did Fitz do to Thick to make Thick have such an aversion to him? And Fitz can answer honestly, like, no, I have no idea. Knew of no reason that the half-wit would dread me. I was only glad that he did. And we know that reason is that he's trying to avoid Fitz because the piebalds are trying to make him spy and do stuff to Fitz. And I'm sure it's just, in general, Thick just is trying to avoid more work and avoid stink dog, whatever.
Stink dog, yeah. Well, I feel like the way you phrase that makes it seem as though Thick is being benevolent by avoiding Fitz. I think it's more he's wary because of the things being told to him. It makes him feel like Fitz is a bad person.
Yeah. But the lessons with Dutiful progressed the exact opposite of that reluctance and aversion. Dutiful is incredibly open and willing to skill and dives into it. Sometimes I wondered wistfully what it would have been like if Prince Verity had been my first skill instructor. Would I have responded as readily as his son did to me? My own memories of Skillmaster Galen's lessons were painful in the extreme. I had seen no wisdom in emulating his set routines and mental exercises designed to prepare a student to skill. And he says that Dutiful doesn't seem to need those exercises. He's just willing to throw himself into the skill immediately, without any walls.
Right.
And maybe that was a benefit to Fitz when he was starting out because he had to work past his walls and had some caution. Dutiful, on the other hand, is just throwing himself in.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because again, I think we get a sense that Fitz is sort of misremembering the past of what it was like when he first started out and how open he was to learning the skill. He definitely thought that the way that he was being told to live by Galen was stupid and did not agree with it, but he did live that way for a set amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was in it for a little bit. He didn't go all the way and he stopped eventually. And there were some things that he was doing that were outside of what was being asked of him. Like he was giving into some comforts because of his extra roles.
Right.
But in general, I feel like this is another example of Fitz sort of having a distorted memory of what happened, and also his own willingness to do anything, to do whatever, and to sort of jump into the skill. He has had walls. He did naturally come in with walls because he had to hide being witted and his secrets of being an assassin. But other than that, he was really open and willing to do things. I don't know. So it's interesting to see him act as though maybe it would have been different with somebody else. And it would have, obviously, because he wouldn't have been traumatized the same way. But I don't know. Seeing how he's sort of like wishing he was as open as Dutiful, knowing that he was at one point the same way is, I don't know. It's just, there's something there.
It says that worse when Dutiful skilled out to him, it was as if he tried to thread a needle with a rope. Verity had once told me that being skilled to by my father, chivalry, was like being trampled by a horse. So he barged in, dropped his information, and fled. So it was with Dutiful. I highlighted that as well because we said the exact opposite a few chapters ago. When Fitz saved Dutiful from the skill, he was arrowed a thought in the skill that was well done. Next time, do better, have more care with yourself and with him. And we were like, oh, that must have been chivalry, or it was a good idea that maybe it could have been chivalry because his skill was so thoughtful and precise. But we were misremembering.
Well, I don't know if we were, because Isn't this in reference to something Chivalry said about Verity said about Chivalry when they were younger and first learning?
Maybe? I don't remember.
I
I
don't.
do not remember anymore.
I was thinking that later he's more like an arrow, but to begin with, and that's how the whole Galen thing happened, is that he like rushed in, dropped a thought, and got out. I don't know.
Maybe. Now I'm thinking of like it might have been Verity, like
Maybe
resting
yeah,
in the skill stream, you know?
it could have been. Who knows?
Who knows? But he's in between all of these scenes where he's talking about things, he also speaks with Chade about these topics. So right now he's complaining to Chade about how Dutiful is so eager and so willing to do these things that soon he's going to outstrip Fitz of what he's able to do, and Fitz will not be able to instruct him properly or safely or warn him about things. I felt almost relief when I started teaching him Kettle's stone game. He found it difficult to grasp at first, though he seems to be catching on to it now. I hope it will slow him down and help him learn to look for deeper patterns in his magic. All else seems to come to him so easily. He skills as a hound pup instinctively puts his nose to a trail, as if he is remembering how to do it rather than being taught it. And is that bad? The old assassin asked genially. He began to rummage amongst the tea herbs on the high shelves. Those shelves had always been reserved for his most dangerous and potent concoctions. I smiled briefly as he clambered up on a stool and wondered if he still supposed them safely out of my reach, which I thought was funny little imagery and kind of comforting, I guess.
Yeah.
Those little reminiscing thoughts thrown in there in the middle.
Right, of habits.
Yeah, exactly. But Fitz says that it could be dangerous if he surpasses me. I can't really teach him guardrails or safe practices because I have no experience in those things if he goes beyond what I know.
Right. And that's the big key, is that he wants to keep Dutiful safe, because there are a lot of real dangers. And we've talked before about how Chade doesn't seem to acknowledge the dangers that the skill possesses. He just sees all the possibilities. And so to him, there's nothing that could possibly happen that could be so bad that you would need to be overlooking him if he outshines your skill ability. Despite the fact that August was burnt through the skill,
Right.
and like that would have been something that someone that Chade knew about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he has firsthand experience seeing what happens when you go overboard with the skill.
But that was, I mean, Chade might see it differently because that was Verity reaching through August and slapping down Regal, basically, to speak to Kettrikin, right? So maybe he sees it more as like this was a retribution thing. I don't know.
I guess.
And
I mean, he could excuse it away in a lot of different ways. Maybe August wasn't farseer enough for him, although that's a cousin of Fitz, right? August was.
Yeah.
So.
But also, as we see later on, Chade thinks Fitz is too cautious.
Yes.
So maybe he's in his head still thinking like, well, Fitz is erring on the side of caution. It's not as dangerous as he's saying.
That's fair. What are the odds it happens again?
Right. Yeah. Fitz is also half translating a scroll or trying to translate one of the scrolls right now, and is also kind of envious of Dutiful's ability with languages because Fitz is out of practice and he has to go word by word while Dutiful can kind of grasp the meaning of a sentence and jot it down. So in the same way, he's like, maybe I'm just envious of all of Dutiful's abilities right now, and maybe that's making me a bad teacher. But Chade takes a different track, kind of saying out loud, maybe he got it from you, meaning that when Fitz was skilling to Dutiful as a baby, maybe that repeated contact kind of taught Dutiful the pathways in his mind to skilling and made him accustomed to it, made it easier for him to learn as an adult.
Right. Which also would explain sort of the way that he is remembering how to do it rather than being taught, which is how Fitz feels.
Right.
And it could be just that, right? That like he has done it before, or he's seen it done before enough times to sort of be able to follow the trail of memories rather than be taught the way to do it right the first time.
Yeah. Fitz does not like that trend, though. Nettle instantly sprang to my mind, and a wave of guilt swept through me. Had I endangered her as well? You're just trying to make it my own fault. I tried to make my tone light, as if that would chase away my sudden dread. I sighed and reluctantly pulled my translation work back in front of me. If I was to have any hope of continuing as Dutiful's teacher, I needed to learn more of the skill myself. This was a scroll that suggested a series of exercises that a student should be given to improve his focus. I hoped it would be useful to me. Then the topic changes a little bit here, where Chade goes over to Fitz and looks over the scroll that he's translating and says, "Oh, what happened to the other one that I showed you?" I glanced up at him, puzzled. "What other scroll?" He looked annoyed. "You know the one. I left it out for you." I gave our littered table a meaningful glance. There were at least a dozen other scrolls and papers cluttering it. "Which one?" "It was one of these. I showed it to you, boy. I'm sure of it." I was equally certain he had not, but I held my tongue. Chade's memory was failing him. I knew it. So did he, but he would not admit it. I had also discovered that even a mention of that possibility would throw him into a fury that was more unsettling to me than the notion that my old mentor was not as sharp as he had been. So I silently watched him poke through the jumble of writings until he came to a scroll with a decorative blue edge. "See, here it is, right where I left it for you. You haven't studied it at all." "No, I haven't," I admitted it easily, hoping to avoid the whole topic of whether or not he'd shown me the scroll. "What did you say it's about?" He gave me a disgusted glance. "It's about pain related to skilling, the sort of headaches you have. It suggests some remedies, exercises as well as herbs, but it also says that in time you may simply stop having the headaches. But it's the note toward the end that interested me. Trini says that some skill masters used a pain barrier to keep their students from experimenting on their own. He doesn't say that it might be made strong enough to prevent a man from skilling at all. It interested me for two reasons. I wondered if Galen had done it to you, and I wondered if it might be a way to control Thick." I noticed he did not suggest it as a safety barrier for the prince. So there's a couple things in there. One, again, a mention of Chade kind of losing his memory, and you had made it a point to single out instances where that was happening earlier on, but in this chapter, it specifically makes this a thing to focus on.
Yes.
Makes it aware to the reader finally, like, and firmly and out there that yes, he is losing his memory, and Chade knows it as well.
Yeah. So this is the time when it becomes, like you said, it's more evident to the reader. The Fitz is taking more time to think about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, and he's really losing it. There's this big gap in memory, which I think is sort of the biggest one so far. There have been little moments here and there that are, plausible enough to just be something that slipped his mind.
And
or
there must
just
have been
be
other things as well, because Fitz says that there have been instances where he's suggested such a thing and
right.
it has not been reacted to well. So, yeah, there must have been other little, I don't know, lapses.
Right. And I mean, he does know enough that he can't say that it's a lapse because it will trigger Chade and he'll freak out about it. But it did at first when this sort of event started happening, I did wonder if maybe this was like a piebald plot that I was forgetting, where like they're using Thick to make Chade forget, and like he told Chade, and so I don't know, or Chade told Thick and Thick made him forget, and I don't know. So then I was like, no, that's way too convoluted, and I don't think that happens. I would definitely remember if it did, but it is one of those things where it's like, okay, so this is just something that's happening now, and that's kind of a wild one to forget, of like talking to somebody and not having talked to them at all. He had clearly put the scroll on the table,
Right. Yeah.
And
I mean, it's just like in your mind, you're like, okay, I'm putting this here. I need to talk to Fitz. And then you see it later, like, oh, the scroll's there. I must have mentioned it to him or something,
yeah.
Just kind of, he's about 70 now.
But I feel like 70 isn't that old.
He might be older than that too, by the way.
Right.
I
But
think he's like 70
I mean,
to
I guess I don't know.
78. I don't know.
I'm not there yet, but I feel like maybe my thing is Chade is exercising his brain and his body for that matter pretty regularly right now, and I feel like I know in real world that is what helps keep like older people young. It like as long as you are engaging your brain, it keeps like
Yeah.
aging slow, I guess. I don't know the best way to phrase that.
But it is so much information.
It is a lot of information. And to be fair, we know that something runs in the family because King Shrewd was failing, and especially his memory and his mind, even though King Shrewd is younger.
Yeah. He had an illness of his own, plus was getting magically messed with as well.
Yes.
But both in combination is what happened. So yeah, there must be some sort of genetic
and
disposition towards it.
Right. And something like that, well, with Shrewd, where it was some sort of, I don't know, maybe like dementia or Alzheimer's, like early onset for him. It can run in the family and then start at different ages for each person.
Right.
Like it's not a set, you have to be 55 years old and then that's when it happens. It just depends. And so maybe this is sort of the genetic farseer line of once you hit a certain age, it just starts being harder for you. Or maybe it's too much for him to handle all at once. I don't know. But it does feel a little strange that he struggles all of a sudden. It does feel abrupt, even though I have been sort of pointing out. It feels very abrupt. It's like, no, not Chade.
But he also brings up thick again here, which Fitz is in his mind is kind of groaning like, oh, we're back on this topic. And he says, I don't want to put any kind of pain barrier. He's constantly skilling out. I don't know what that would do to him. And Chade just kind of grunts dismissively, and Fitz is then like, oh, he knew what I would say about thick, basically. He wanted to bring up the topic of that pain barrier in relation to me more so, and just used thick as another reason to bring it up. So it wasn't just, hey, I'm looking into your problems.
Yeah, like, hey, I'm trying to help you, because we know how well Fitz takes that.
Right.
So
what do you think about that? About Galen putting a pain barrier on Fitz?
I think in a way it's true. I think because I mean, we do know that it is from an injury, right?
Right.
Like,
we know that it's not a deliberate pain barrier.
Yes.
That, like, what Trini is describing in the scroll that Chade found. But I think I can agree with you. It's a trauma pain barrier.
Yes. Well, and also, like, he definitely did something. And maybe without the injury that Fitz sustained, it wouldn't have been a permanent pain barrier. I mean, we don't get enough information about what that looks like and what it actually does. Fitz just sort of reads the scroll and then says he doesn't learn much more than what Chade told him. So without like the exact wording to look at of how that pain barrier works and whether or not it's permanent, there is a chance that it was amplified to begin with Galen's magic.
Right.
Or even just something he accidentally did.
Fitz kind of goes through the reasoning why he doesn't think it's a thing, though. But he's also trying to remember exactly when he started having headaches after skilling. It always left me wearied. The first time Verity drew strength from me, I fainted dead away. Any real effort with it left me almost sick with fatigue. But I don't recall the skill having an aftermath of pain until... I pondered for a time and then shook my head. I can't draw a line. The first time I skill walked by accident, I woke trembling with weakness. I used the elf bark for it, then and in the times that followed. And after a time, the weakness after I'd skilled began to be pain as well. I sighed. No, I don't think the pain is a barrier anyone put in me.
This is crazy because there is a clear line and we know it's after his accident with Galen. But Fitz doesn't know that.
The pain, no. It's after the dungeons, I thought.
Oh.
Or not the dungeons. It's after I think after his near death experience in the mountains, maybe?
I thought it was on the tower with Galen where he gets hurt severely and like almost jumps off the side.
I didn't think so, but now it's something that
I
we
guess
don't
we
know
don't know where
either.
the line is either. It's
I feel like we identified a solid line of where it started happening when we were going through those episodes.
yes.
Right now, we just don't remember where
Yeah.
that was.
But it's interesting that Fitz can't remember because it
Yeah.
happened to him. It's always easier to remember things that happen to yourself.
But he is
Um,
also partially forged and got rid of a lot of those memories and
He did.
feelings from those memories.
He did. I was also going to say that I think it's also interesting, though, that Fitz is sort of attributing the pain, well, not pain, but the struggles he's had in the past with using skill as being precursors to the pain. And it's just an inevitable thing that happened to him.
Right.
When the reason he was struggling so much with skill and having those intense reactions feels more like it was from overuse of a magic he wasn't trained in most of the time, and or because he was struggling with his own seizure episodes at the time where he was recovering from a very serious near-death accident in the mountains
Yeah, the
when he was
poisoning.
drowning.
Yeah.
Or got poisoned and then almost drowned.
Mm-hmm.
So that isn't something that like is just naturally he was super bad at the skill. He just was super bad, and no matter what he did, it would have been bad. No, it's because he had all these like near death experiences and then was forced into something that was draining his life for. Like skill uses your life to work, it seems. Like that is, it doesn't necessarily
Doesn't
permanently,
shorten your
not
lifespan,
permanently,
but it uses, what is the word that Robin Hobb uses, like anima or something?
Yes.
It uses like your current will and strength of
Yes.
life.
And when he was weak, of course it's not going to be easy for him because he's recovering. So like
Yep.
it's just odd to me that Fitz wouldn't put those things together, especially because I think he's been talked to about it. Maybe he hasn't. Maybe we just know this as readers and I'm expecting too much. But it does strike as odd, especially here where he's so adamant that it couldn't have been something Galen did, that there's always been pain, that it's just he's bad at this. It just goes back to my whole thing of I feel like it's weird how little Fitz remembers of what actually happened pre big fight with Galen. Like he has this weird thing around he's never been good at skilling and it's not for him and he's never going to be good again. It's just pain. So that's what makes me feel like there's some sort of skill command in there making it worse.
Yeah, we definitely talked about that too back then, I think. Of it wasn't just like you should jump over the side and end your life. It was also you're worthless kind of stuff.
Right.
But Chade kind of switches tacks and maybe it's because you're also witted and you use the wit. Much is said in the scrolls about the damages of using both magics. And Fitz is getting frustrated because, like, oh man, Chade is reminding me of all the stuff that I don't know. And it frustrates me because I have to guide Dutiful through all of this and I don't know. Right. So he just responds to Chade like, I don't know. Perhaps if the prince begins to have pain after skilling, we can assume that. And then Chade's like, well, I thought you were going to separate the two for him. And Fitz again is like, well, I would if I knew how. I don't know pretty much anything about this. I don't know how to make him separate the two magics any more than I know how to remove the skill command I set on him back when we were on the beach. The command not to fight you? I nodded. Well, it seems that should be a simple thing to me. Simply reverse it. I clenched my teeth. I did not say it seems only simple to you because you have neither magic and don't know what you're talking about. I was weary, I told myself, and frustrated. I should not take it out on the old man.
Yeah, and this is what I mean when I said earlier that this chapter is very much a moody Fitz. This is grumpy, like
He's frustrated by pretty
burnt
much
out.
every little thing.
Yes, he is taking everything to the extreme. It's all sort of a negative against him. He can't use his brain well enough to understand that maybe this isn't an attack on him.
Well,
It's just
he
conversation.
can, but he has to take moments to tamp down the emotions that are flaring. He just
Yes.
is so worn out that he doesn't have the same self-control that he normally does.
Right. Which I think is the point, right? That I'm trying to make is that he's clearly tired. He needs a nap. He is doing too much. He's very spread thin at the moment.
Yeah.
But he does take a breath and sort of try to settle it down and just say, I don't quite know how I burned the command into him, and so I don't quite know how to lift it. Simply reverse it is not simple at all. What would I command him? Fight me? Remember that chivalry did the same thing to Skillmaster Galen. In anger, he burned a command into him, and he and Verity never puzzled out how to remove it. And I find that part a little bit interesting because Fitz is calling his own father chivalry. He doesn't say my father. It's just that chivalry did this thing too, and chivalry and Verity couldn't figure it out. So how am I supposed to? I didn't even get trained. And then Chade sort of brings up, well, you could just work with the prince. He's your student, right?
Yep.
And then this also sort of gets Fitz's temper flaring because he's embarrassed that he did this to the prince, and he doesn't want to tell the prince that he's done it. He still hasn't said it, and he doesn't want to, and it's embarrassing that this happened at all to him. And so it's just really frustrating. And he says, I haven't told him, and I don't plan to. I think it'll ruin the trust that I've built.
He's ashamed that he did it as well.
Yeah. And he's ashamed that he's admitting to his shame in front of Chade. And so it's just this whole big thing. And he's not happy about the situation at all. And he's frustrated because he's trying to talk to Chade, but also hates anything Chade has to say about the situation. And I think it's just so Fitz that he's like, nobody understands me. And then when somebody's trying to understand him, he shuts down and is like, that's not right. And I'm not going to explain any further. Like, okay, buddy, let's take a nap. Let's just...
Chade continues trying to get to know what they're doing in the lessons then, just see how those things are progressing. And Fitz says, well, mostly I'm getting to know him. We've been translating scrolls together, and I borrowed some practice blades from the weapons shed, and we've tried one another at that. He's a good swordsman. If the number of bruises he has given me are a fair indication, then I think I lightened my skill command, if not erased it. But you aren't sure? And Fitz goes on to say, like, no, we're practicing. We're not actually trying to hurt each other. But I've never noticed that he holds back or allows me to win more easily. Well, I think it's very good that he has you for those sorts of things, as well as the skill lessons. I think he was missing that sort of rough companionship in his life. I suppose only time will tell. So, do you skill at all with him? Yes, we've been doing some exercises to help him focus his magic. Focus? Right now, when he skills, he shouts from the top of the tower, and anyone listening could hear him. We strive to narrow that shout, to make it a whisper only to me. And so Fitz kind of details some of the homework that he's given Dutiful, where if he's off in the castle, he'll try to skill to Fitz what he's eating, or skill the conversation that he's having around him, or further on, he'll skill what he's eating while he's having this conversation, but hide who he's having the conversations with from Fitz. All these kind of different things to practice.
Right. There's also, he's supposed to try to skill while he's in the middle of conversations without breaking the conversation or skilling about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And also, they have other goals set, like, can he wall me out of his mind? Could he set walls that I could not breach, even in the dead of night while he slept? Chade frowned to himself. I tried not to smile. Sometimes when we were alone like this, he reverted from the grand noble to the intent old man who had taught me my first trade. Do you think that's wise, teaching him how to close you out of his mind? Well, he has to learn to do it in case he ever encounters someone who doesn't have his best interest at heart. At the moment, I'm the only other skill user he can practice with. There's Thick. And this whole time, Chade has been, as he gathered the herbs from the top shelf, mixing a very noxious tea for himself, like a noxious concoction that smells
Yes.
bad and is all in all pretty nasty. And then he starts to try to drink it here.
Right. Also, I just want to take a minute. I guess I haven't said until now, but I think it's kind of odd to me how in Thick's corner Chade suddenly is. Because prior, when it was brought up that Thick might be able to skill, Chade was thinking mostly about the best way to get rid of him as a potential threat. And a little bit didn't care because he didn't feel like Thick was going to be capable of learning skill. And it was sort of Fitz who was like, well, I think it could be worth it to try. And now all of a sudden, Fitz is like, I hate Thick. I don't want to be near Thick. I don't want to go anywhere close to him. I don't want to teach him. And it's Chade that's like, let's teach him. Let's try. Let's see what happens. And I think that's such a odd change to me that sort
Really?
of, I don't know.
You think it's odd? I feel like that's kind of Chade's MO though, right? Like he has this problem. Thick, he learns that Thick can skill. Okay, there's two options. We train him and keep him on our side or kill him because we can't send him away because,
Right.
you know, a tool, whatever, blah, 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 all the quotes about
Right.
it. So Fitz advocates for, like, well, let's keep him around. So now Chade has, okay, this is the choice we made. You have to train him. We decided to keep him around.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're right that that's not that weird. I think
Also,
it's weird.
He's a weapon, right? He's super strong according to Fitz. So just train
That's
him,
true.
Fitz. We need him for the for the crown.
That's true. I guess mainly the odd thing to me is how anti-Thick Fitz suddenly has become, but also I feel like how pro-Thick Chade has become. Because
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Chade hated Thick or anything, but Chade sort of treated Thick as like a pet up until this point. It felt like I didn't love the way
Just
Chade
like
acts.
a
Yeah,
child,
a
basically.
child. Yeah, there's like a child in his care, and he doesn't quite know how to handle Thick. But it didn't seem like he was like the biggest cheerleader for Thick, and now he's like, yeah, Thick seems great. Let's help him, and that's great. I mean, I want him to be nice to Thick, obviously, but it just feels like a departure from how he was previously acting. And I think it's just only made more odd whenever you have Fitz, who was previously like, hey, this is a human being who is clearly not a child. And just because he like comes off childlike doesn't mean he is a child, and we
Right.
should respect him as a human being. And now he's like, I don't want to go near him. I'm scared. I don't want to teach him. I don't want to be near him.
I think it's because of the things that you mentioned before, where Fitz is stretched thin right now, and Thick is just one extra complication of someone who obviously does not like him. Why would he make that effort when he has so much other things to do? So he's just as glad that Thick is avoiding him because it's one less thing on his plate.
Okay. Maybe I'm just reading it too harsh, because it did seem like he just this chapter decided he is low-key afraid of Thick and does not want to be near him. And before it was sort of like, I wonder what's wrong and what I can do to make him not hate me so much. And now it's like, I don't care if he hates me. I don't like him. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I guess maybe I'm just doing too harsh of a reading.
Well, Chade has made his greenish black tea, regarding it with distaste. And Fitz says, you know, only one student is what I can deal with right now. Did you take any action on Thick's problem? What problem? I felt a moment's alarm. I tried to conceal it by speaking casually. I thought I told you about it. He was having problems with the other servants hitting him and taking his money. Oh, that. I breathed a silent sigh of relief. He hadn't forgot our conversation. So, Fitz, even with, you know, a normal thing that somebody, you know, took care of, didn't deem it as consequential as the other person asking, doesn't remember it right away. Fitz is like, oh my gosh, he's lost all of his memory. He's freaking out about this. And Chade's like, I took care of that. It's fine. He has his own room now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And
Which is it was not the problem originally that Thick was having. It's what Fitz assumed was happening.
Yeah. And also, I think this does go back to Fitz sort of catastrophizing, right? Like he did this
Yeah.
with Night Eyes. When he realized Night Eyes was aging, he
Yeah.
saw everything as a sign of the age, and like Night Eyes is like impending death, and everything was worrisome. And it's like he latches on to these negative things happening to his loved ones and thinks the worst possible thing. And so in this moment where it was just a casual, like, what are you talking about? I need clarification. Fitz is like, he's forgotten everything. See, this is his mind slipping, which he did forget something earlier in the conversation, obviously. But it's that like immediate jump to this can't just be he doesn't know what we're talking about. It's his mind is gone. And so that makes it harder too with Chade to know how bad Chade actually is, because we have a crafty spy who doesn't want to let it show that he's slipping,
Right.
and his boy who is worried and will take every little thing as a sign of impending death. So so it's a little tough.
Yeah. Conversation kind of sticks on thick here, where Fitz once again brings up sending him away, and Chade's like, as long as he's the only other skill candidate we have, I'm not going to send him away. Have you made any efforts with him, with your relationship with him? And Fitz says, I haven't had the opportunity. He's been gone and missing. And Chade says, he's had other tasks of late. Well, that explains his lack of care with his work here, I observed sourly. Some days he remembers to replace the candle stubs with fresh tapers, some days he doesn't. Some days the hearth is cleared of ashes and wood laid for the fire, and sometimes the old ashes and coals remain. I think it's because he dislikes me so. He does as little as he possibly can. He can't read, so I can't give him a list of tasks. Sometimes he remembers to do all I tell him, sometimes he doesn't. That only makes him a poor servant, not a lazy or spiteful one. Jade is trying to drink this brew, and this time he, despite his best efforts, coughs and sprays some of it up. I snatched the scrolls out of harm's way, and he wiped his mouth with his kerchief and then blotted the table. Beg pardon, he said gravely, his eyes watering. He took a gulp of wine. What's in the tea? Sylve leaf, witch's butter, sea crepe, and a few other herbs. He took another mouthful of it and chased it down with more wine. What's it for? A memory tickled at the back of my mind. Some problems I've been having, he evaded. Fitz rises up and shuffles through the scrolls and eventually comes to one that he found and says, those herbs are named here as being helpful to open a candidate to the skill. So? Chade, what are you doing? What are you trying? For a moment, he just looked at me. Then he asked coldly, are you jealous? Do you also think my birthright should be forbidden me? What? An odd sort of anger broke from him in a tumble of words. I was never even given the chance to be tested for the skill. Bastards are not taught it. Not until you, when shrewd, made an exception. Yet I am as much farseer as you are, and I have some of the lesser magics, as well you should know by now. He was upset, and I didn't know why. I nodded and said calmingly, such as your scrying in water. It was how you knew of the red ship attack on Neat Bay all those years ago. Yes, he said with satisfaction. He sat back in his chair, but his hands scuttled along the table's edges like spiders. I wondered if the drugs in the tea were affecting him. Yes, I have magics of my own, and perhaps, given the chance, I'd have the magic of my blood, the magic I've a right to. Don't try to deny it to me, Fitz. For all those years, my own brother forbade me even being tested. I was good enough to watch his back, good enough to teach his sons and his grandson, but I was never good enough to be given my rightful magic. I wondered how long the resentment had festered in him. Then I recalled his excitement when Shrewd allowed me to be taught, and his frustration when I seemed to fail and would not even discuss my lessons with him. This was a very old anger, unveiled to me for the first time.
I feel like it's strange that Fitz can't sort of put himself in Chade's shoes in this moment.
I think he gets there, but I think it takes a lot for him to get there.
Yeah, and But it always does. He's got such a blind spot where skill and Chade are concerned. And I think he also has a blind spot when it comes to the fact that Chade is also a bastard. And like he likes to pretend like he's the only one who understands what it was like to be a Farseer bastard. And like he had this very tough life that no one else can get. And then here's Chade, who absolutely does get it, and Fitz doesn't let him in, and he doesn't like
I feel like there's
associate the two.
I feel like there's the thing where, you know, if you view your parents as parents and then suddenly you see them as a human with like flaws, with, you know, goals, all these different things as well. And I think Fitz is kind of caught in between the seeing Chade still as that pedestal, like he was my mentor, he's my master, he knows everything.
Right.
And that's why he's so, like you said, catastrophizing him losing his memories. Like, oh my gosh, my pillar, my rock is losing his strengths.
Right.
And he can't, or before this, he couldn't fathom Chade also being denied something, also being humanized in any way. And I think that's what he's trying to come to terms with during this, which is why it takes him a little bit.
That's fair. But I do feel like I think I have this problem every time Chade gets a little testy with Fitz because of Chade's own superiority complex, I guess.
Yeah.
That like Fitz just, he has a weird thing about feeling like Chade shouldn't get to learn about the skill for no reason. And
he's very protective of the skill scrolls. Like, no, if you're not skilled at all, you shouldn't see them.
yes, but then it never crosses his mind that like maybe he was skilled.
Yeah.
It just is, it's so weird. I don't get it. Fitz doesn't understand it either, and he refuses to dwell on it, so we'll never know what his deal is.
It's so odd because Fitz, who we get the perspective from, almost hates all of his magics that he has, and everyone around him does not. So he cannot fathom why people would want to learn more about these magic that they have. You know, learn more about themselves.
Right. Well, Fitz doesn't want to learn more about himself. I don't know. I think therapy would help.
Right. Yeah.
If I had to say prescribe one thing for Fitz to help him, I think therapy, number one. But I think I get frustrated when I read this because I do feel really bad for Chade in this moment. And I feel like look, there's a lot about Chade that I don't love. I think he makes a lot of decisions I disagree with, and he just lives his life in a way that I don't feel is good for most people. However, I think in moments like this where he's really humanized, where you really see that like he has struggled to get where he has been, and like the one person who might sort of get that doesn't get it.
Right.
It's really sad. I do feel bad for him. I do feel like there's an underlying thing of it's odd that Chade feels entitled to certain things because he's a Farseer too, if that makes sense. Like,
I don't think that's that crazy because it was his father, Bounty, who is the one who restricted it to Farseers. And like, hey, this is a kingly magic. So he's brought in as a Farseer. He gets the last name and then doesn't get to learn it. And then his own brother denies him as well. Like there's some things that I can get about that.
Yeah, for sure. But it does, I don't know. It's like something, maybe it's because I have like an own personal problem with people who like feel that they deserve things without earning it. Like it just, he inherently should get it because he's a Farseer, which is what he's saying. Ultimately really rubs me the wrong way. And so it's hard for me to like then be like, okay, but think about what he's gone through, and like he's not phrasing it well, and like ultimately I do feel like he should be given a chance to learn the skill. I don't disagree. I just hate the way he talks about it. So like actually you don't get to. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of nuance with Chade, and I do feel bad. And I think it would be horrendous to feel that way. He clearly feels like he was never good enough, right?
Yeah.
And all the people who he felt he couldn't live up to are dead now.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. And then he has Fitz, who he also can't really gain the full approval of.
But
which
Fitz is also asking conversationally and calmingly because this is an anger that Fitz is not accustomed to, and as he says, revealed for the first time, just says like, "Why now? Why are you doing it now?" And Chade has to say, "Why do you think I've waited? Yes, I've had the scrolls for 15 years, but now you're right, there is more urgency for me to learn this. We've spoken of this before. I knew you would not wish to help me." It was true. Yet if he had asked me just then, I would not have been able to say why. I avoided the question. "What is your need now? The land is relatively peaceful. Why risk yourself?" "Fitz, look at me. Look at me! I'm getting old. Time has played me a treacherous trick. When I was young and able, I was locked up in these chambers, forced to remain hidden and powerless. Now, when I have a chance to set the Farseer throne on a firm foundation, when indeed my family needs me most, I am old and becoming feeble. My mind totters, my back aches, my memories cloud. Do you think I haven't seen the dread on your face whenever I tell you I must look through my journals to find you a tidbit of information? Imagine then how I feel. Imagine how it is, Fitz, to not have your own memories at your beck and call anymore. To grope for a name, to suddenly lose the thread of a conversation in the midst of a jest. As a boy, when you thought your body had betrayed you with your fits, you plunged into despair. Yet you always had your mind. I think I'm losing mine." And this is what I was talking about, like putting, somebody on a pedestal, because Fitz says it was a terrible revelation, as if I had discovered the foundations of Buckkeep Castle itself were weakening and crumbling. And he goes into all the details about how Fitz is just realizing all that Chade has done for Kettricken over the past few months, because Chade is keeping him apprised of all these things, and how he is juggling so much all the time of all the different power struggles of all the nobles and vices of all the nobles and things that are happening. So it's insane to him that Chade would be admitting to losing his memory.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good look at Chade as a person because we don't often get to see the man behind the mask, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like, I do think we see a lot of Chade and who he is, but I think this is really the heart of his struggles and how he's feeling and sort of the hurt that he has been dealt by the Farseer family and in the name of the Farseer. And it sort of goes back to sometimes I think, why is he doing this? Why does he care? Why does he back Regal just because he's a Farseer? Why does he consistently put Farseer above everything else? Why is that such a big deal? And then you get this sort of revelation of it's been his whole life and it has to
Yeah.
be for something.
Yeah.
It had to be worth it. There has to be a reason that he has made it this far and that he has been so successful and that everything is worked out, and it has to be because
And
the
he's
Farseers are ahead of everybody, and he's the cornerstone of that.
and he's weathered a ton of storms. He's
Yes.
gotten the royal family and the kingdom itself through to basic stability right now, but he knows he's at the cusp of actually firming up those
Yes.
foundations, as he says, and like actually making it a dynasty rather than something that could tumble with some, outside threats.
Yeah, in a few years after he's gone, it's
Exactly.
gone. It yeah.
He's at the precipice of, getting a seventh duchy in, securing alliances with out islanders and stuff, and making this an actual kind of diplomatic kingdom rather than just at the edge of a war with two nations.
Yeah.
And now he's losing his mind.
And I think that is something that's very real, right? Like I think age comes to us all. It's not something that you can fight in the real world, at least. And it
Right.
just happens. And it is really unfortunate that sometimes the consequences of age and aging stops us from what we might think is our full potential. And I think it's kind of crazy because he has already done so much, right? But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do a little bit think it goes back to this weird conceit that Chade has where he feels like he's the only one that can do this. He is not training up anyone to take his place. He doesn't want more time to make sure the next generation has his information and knows what to do with it and can do what he does without him. He doesn't want them to do it without him. He wants to do it.
He
And
wanted Fitz to take over, but Fitz does not want to.
yes, for sure. But I mean, like, realistically, even if Fitz today was like, oh my gosh, you're right, teach me everything just in case this goes wrong, is he giving all his secrets over to Fitz?
Not right
I don't
away,
think
of course
so.
not.
Well, I feel like who Chade is as a person, there is a lot of pride there. I think
Oh, yeah.
he wants to be the one. He doesn't want his apprentice to be the one. He doesn't want anyone else to be the one. He wants to be the one. And I think that's sort of his hubris.
That's fair.
But I don't know. I'm not trying to like be harsh on my man Chade, but I think that's like his biggest Achilles heel is that he does not want help. It's just like Fitz. Fitz doesn't let people in, and it's like sort of the other side of the coin is Chade, who doesn't let anyone help.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to what you first said before. Like, Fitz is the first one who could maybe understand, and he's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, Chade's like, I can do this by myself then. I always have.
Yeah. And really sadly, it's sort of reaffirming to Chade that the Farseers look down on him, that he's not good enough for the Farseers, even
Right.
though he is. He is more than proved himself, and he shouldn't have to prove himself. He's been doing great things for the Farseers. He makes a lot of choices I disagree with, but he ultimately has kept Kettrikin on the throne and ensured that Dutiful inherits a pretty good kingdom.
So Fitz is in his head kind of marveling at all that of Chade, at everything that Chade does, kind of balancing everything. And he says it's kind of like Kettle's stone game played on a grand scale. Markers moved and alliances changed and power shifted, sometimes all within a passage of hours. It made Chade's depth of knowledge all the more amazing as he conducted Queen Kettrikin's balancing act on the shifting loyalties of the nobility. I could not possibly keep up with it all, and yet it all was interconnected. Since I had returned to Buckkeep, I had marveled that the old man could integrate it all and dreaded the coming of a day when he could not. None of this was as easy for him as it had once been. The presence of his journals, massive volumes of pages bound flat in the Jamalian style, were an indication that he did not trust his own memory anymore. There were 6 identical volumes, with covers of red, blue, green, yellow, purple, and goldenrod, one for each of the 6 duchies. How he determined what information belonged in each was beyond my understanding. A 7th volume, white with the Farseer buck on the front, was where he penned his day-to-day minutiae. This he referred to most often, leafing through it for scraps of gossip or the text of a conversation or the summary of a spy's report. And even within this secret volume, hidden in the concealed chamber, he made his entries in his own cryptic words. He did not offer me access to his volumes, and I did not ask. So Fitz is kind of going through all of this, like, it is crazy that he balances it all, and it's still not as easy as it used to be because he has to write things down. But even if I had access to all of this, I probably could not do what he does. So for Chade to admit that his mind is going, he's like, well, this is awful.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot.
So then he says, I know things have been difficult for you lately. I've worried about you. But why then would you tax yourself further with trying to learn the skill? And Chade responds, it's because of what I've read. The text says a skill user can repair his own body, can extend his years. How old was that kettle that you journeyed with? 200 years? 300? And she was still spry enough to take on a mountain winter. You yourself had told me that you reached into your wolf and with it made him whole again, at least for a time. If I could open myself to your skill, could not you do that for me? Or if you refused, as I think you might, could not I do it for myself? They're silent for a time, and Chade drains the rest of his tea.
And then says, I notice you did not spring to offer me your aid.
And Fitz just sighs and says, I barely know the rudiments I strive to teach the prince. How can I offer to teach you a magic I barely understand myself? What if that has been your greatest weakness, Fitz, all your life? Too much caution, not enough ambition. Shrewd liked that in you. He never feared you as he did me. As I gaped in pain at him, he spoke on, seeming unmindful of the blow he had just dealt me. I did not expect you to approve, not that your approval is necessary. I think it is best I explore the edges of this magic on my own. Once I have the door open, well, then we shall see what you think of your old mentor. I think I will surprise you, Fitz. I think I have it, that perhaps I've always had it. You yourself gave me that hint of that when you spoke of Thick's music. I've heard it, I think, on the edges of my mind just as I start to fall asleep at night. I think I have the skill. So Chade insults Fitz without seeming to intend that, just kind of stating fact. He's, of course, upset, Chade is, but I don't think he set out in this comment to deliberately hurt Fitz.
No.
However, it does strike Fitz a dear blow.
Yes, Fitz really takes this hard, and
Yeah.
methinks it is because a hit dog is hollering. Like, we know, I know this to be true in my reading of Fitz. I think he does have too much caution, and to the point where it paralyzes him. I think that's what's important. I love that he thinks about the consequences of his actions, but he lets it stop there. He gets paralyzed in the fear of making a choice that could possibly go wrong.
Right.
And then doesn't make a choice. And it is really annoying at times. And we see that happen in this chapter and the next chapter about multiple how he's handling his time right now and how he always handles his time. There's always, he waits until something forces him to act. He never just makes a choice. Well, not never, that's harsh.
Right.
Most of the time he is not making a choice and acting on it and continuously acting on it and making the choices down that road. Sometimes he makes a choice and acts on it and then panics and then stops making choices. He gets paralyzed. He just can't work past the what ifs.
Right.
And so I think that's why it hurts so bad, because
strikes a little too close to home.
It does, and I think it does hurt for his mentor to be saying, you were never a threat to the throne like me because you have no ambition.
Right.
When Fitz did almost sort of do a coup, to be fair. So, like,
that was kind of, it felt like Fitz was
him.
Forced into that position, though. Because the Outer Duchies came to him and were like, hey, we don't like Regal as much as you obviously don't like Regal.
Yes, you have not been hiding it. Let's have a pact.
So, yeah, and Fitz, to the response of Chade saying, I think I have the skill, is quiet because he's mulling over, I just don't have the ambitions that you guys have. My ambitions are smaller. I just want a life of my own. So he doesn't respond to that statement by Chade, and Chade takes that as an insult back to him.
Right.
Saying like, well, I see you have nothing to say to me.
Right. And I think this too is another thing where I'm a little bit frustrated with Fitz's response, because Fitz gets angry and says things that's hurtful. I mean, he's done it this book. He does it. That's just a thing that people do when they're frustrated.
Yeah.
They accidentally hurt others. And whenever Fitz is the one doing it, he recognizes that he's probably hurt a person and he feels awkward and he doesn't know what to do. But when Fitz is hurt by an offhand word, it's like the end of the world. This is their deepest thought that they truly mean. It's not just an anger. This is what they really, really believe. And it just reaffirms that nobody loves me and nobody actually cares about me. They all just see me as a failure.
Yeah.
And I think that's really sad that he keeps having this sort of block of like, anybody says something relatively negative and it's the end of the world for him, and he can't recognize that, like, hey, the context of this situation, they probably did not mean to hurt my feelings,
right?
And I can just be a bigger person right now and sort of talk about it later. And
Fitz says that the silence grows between them and it's becoming ever more awkward. So when Chade says, I see you've nothing to say to me, He tries to change the topic. How is your boy doing at his apprenticeship? I stood up. Poorly. I suppose that, like his would-be father, he lacks ambition. Good night, Chade. And he leaves. So he also lashes out. I mean, and it's not like an insult at Chade, but it's like a, hey,
You hurt
you
my
hurt
feelings.
me.
Yeah.
So I guess, my son is also bad because I am.
Yes. And I think Fitz's whole thing of, I do have ambition, it's just not what other people want, is crazy to me because he doesn't go after even what he does supposedly want. Like,
I mean, he wants to and he tries, and like in the first trilogy, he I think asks or plans on going to Shrewd to ask to marry Molly, right? And then
mhm,
Shrewd just mistakes him for wanting to ask Celerity.
right.
And when he brings it up, like, no, I mean Molly, like Shrewd gets super mad. So
Yeah.
like I feel like he started to when he was a boy have like some ambitions and like try to advocate for himself, but he's always kind of been beaten down of like, no, you have to stick to the plan. So I
Right.
think there's a
There
little bit in there that's like this was how he was raised, but also he has been a man on his own for 15 years.
and he's done nothing.
And yeah, he's done nothing to move past it, which again, partially forged.
Yes.
He's stunted in his growth, but still, like there's got to be a little bit extra there, Fitz.
Yeah. I think it's just, like I said, I believe that Fitz continuously chooses to do nothing until the option is like until he has to.
Yeah.
And then there's no time to actually make sure that none of the bad things happen. That's his problem, right? Like, he doesn't want to hurt people. He doesn't want to make choices that could potentially cause harm, but because he waits so long to act, he then always creates harm in some way because he didn't plan out and do something while he had time. He waits until his back is against a wall.
Which is also crazy that Robin Hobb makes this as a character work because
Yeah.
it's a character that basically has no agency. Even though
Yeah.
he has all the agency in the world, he chooses not to use it,
Yes.
which is super frustrating, but not in the way it's written. Well, it is. It's super frustrating. But like our frustration is directed at Fitz and not at the way it's written,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, because it feels real, right? It feels
Yeah,
like a person actively not making choices instead of a writer writing things happening to a person, I guess, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like, which obviously is what's happening. We all know that, but it's just Fitz not making choices, not
Mhm.
Hobb not making choices for Fitz.
Well, we move on past the conversations with Chade, and we're still moving through this chapter as Fitz kind of recounts what he's been doing with all of his time. And he says he leaves Chade's chamber and then doesn't want to fall asleep because he's been besieged at night. Nightly, I would set my skill walls before retiring, and nearly nightly, Nettle assaulted those walls. Her strength and her single-mindedness unsettled me. I did not want my daughter to skill. There was no way I could bring her to Buckkeep to instruct her, and I feared for her, attempting these explorations on her own. I reasoned that to let her through would only encourage her in her pursuit of this magic. As long as she did not know that she skilled, as long as she thought she was just reaching out to some dream companion, some otherworldly being she had imagined, perhaps I could keep her safe. And frustrated. If I had reached back to her even once, even to push her away, I feared she might somehow grasp who and where I was. Better to leave her in ignorance. Perhaps after a time of failing to reach me, she might give it up. And then she might settle down and marry some boy nearby. This is what frustrates me. I mean, everything that we've talked about already, but this is Fitz repeating his mistakes. Like, this is what he did with Molly, kind of. Not she repeatedly reached out and I
Right.
wanted to rebuff her, but like, I will leave her in ignorance because she is protected that way.
Yeah.
This is something that he does all the time, like with a lot of people. This is a
Yeah.
continuous decision he makes all the time, which is incredibly frustrating, but it's a pattern. It's who
It
Fitz is. He'd rather leave somebody safe and far away than potentially get to know them and have maybe something bad happen because, again, he's too cautious.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, right? Is that he's guaranteeing that if anything were to happen, it would be devastatingly harmful.
Yeah.
Or
And he
he
would feel
could bring.
guilty and his fault for
Yes.
eternity.
Yes. Or he could bring them into the know, let them know what's going on, and they could potentially get a little hurt. And he's like, I guess I better risk ultimate destruction rather than a paper cut, because at least if I do ultimate destruction, there's a slight chance they might never feel the pain that I cause.
Look,
What?
He has some reasons for keeping Nettle away that he explains, later on, but still it's just not amazing reasons.
They're not good
decent.
enough.
Yeah, they're okay. They're acceptable.
No.
But there's benefits for bringing her in.
I disagree that they're acceptable, because we know that unchecked skill usage is very dangerous, and clearly she's using skill unchecked. He's opening her up to the possibility of losing her mind forever, just so he doesn't have to face the fact that he's been not in her life her entire life, despite knowing about her, and that might hurt her feelings. And I guess also that she would be then brought into the Farseer line and have to be chained to the duty that he was. There is a lot that comes with that. However, the alternative is she potentially loses her mind. And I feel like not being chained to the Farseers is, or like, the need to let her be free of the Farseer name is not a good enough reason to risk her life. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, I feel like that's not valid. And the fact that he thinks it is drives me crazy. Because in his mind, if he doesn't acknowledge it, it'll just go away, because that's worked with everything. And that's definitely how all of the children that he knows and how he used to act. Like, it all works, for sure.
Yeah, so he kind of just ignores her, tries to push her away there. But each morning he wakes up pretty much as haggard as he is when he goes to sleep. So he moves on from thinking about Nettle to now thinking about Hap, because the rest of his life is also not going very well. My efforts to get time to speak to Hap alone were no more fruitful than Chade's arranged meetings with Thick. He was completely besotted with Sfanja. Over a period of 3 weeks, I spent most of my free nights sitting in the stuck pig, hoping for a chance to speak to Hap alone. Often I waited in vain. On the occasions when Hap actually met me there, he brought Sfanja with him. She was a lovely young thing, all dark hair and huge eyes, slender and supple as a willow wand, yet conveying an air of toughness as well. And she loved to talk, giving me little opportunity to get a word in, let alone address Hap privately. And Hap sat beside her, basking in her approval and beauty, as she told me a great deal about herself and her parents and her plans for her future, and what she thought of Hap, Buckkeep, and life in general. I gathered that her mother was worn down by her daughter's willful ways, and was glad that she was seeing a young man with some prospects. Her father's opinion of Hap was not as charitable, but Sfanja expected to bring him around to her way of thinking soon. Or not. If he could not accept that she would choose her own young man, then perhaps her father should stay out of her life. That seemed a fine sentiment for an independent young woman to fling boldly to the winds, save that I was a father, and I did not completely approve of this young woman that Hap had chosen. Sfanja herself seemed to care little that I might not favor her attitude. I found myself liking her spirit, but disliking her disregard for my feelings. So we meet Sfanja here. This is the first time that we've actually, gotten some description of her. And I feel like in my past readings, I disliked her a lot more than I do in this initial meeting, but I know that she later on just kind of like ditches Hap and, is seen walking with a sailor later on and stuff. Like there's other things that she does that are whatever. But honestly, it just seems like she's kind of a young woman who's having fun.
Yeah. She just seems to like what she likes. I feel like one of the reasons, and I keep trying to remember, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like one of the reasons she and Hap don't work out is because Hap ultimately is not going anywhere. Like he does end up getting kicked out of Gintast's apprenticeship And I don't know if that happens before or after she leaves him,
You
but
might be right. It might be
he's
the catalyst.
yeah, I feel like he's sort of on his way out anyway. And he also isn't making any money yet. And I don't know, it feels like this could have worked out and she wouldn't be that bad if Hap would have taken his trade seriously and actually tried to, like, I don't know, be good and be a person with prospects like Svanja's mother thinks he might be.
Yeah. What is it? It's almost Winterfest. It's cuffing season, you know?
Right.
Eventually, there was an evening when Hap arrived alone, but my only opportunity for private conversation with him was less than satisfying. He was sad that Svanja wasn't there, and upset with her father for not letting her come. And also, when Fitz steers the conversation to the apprenticeship, Hap basically just repeats what he's already been telling Fitz. Gindast thought he was a dolt and mocked him before the journeymen. They assigned him the most boring tasks and gave him no opportunity to prove himself. Yet, when I pressed for him for an example, those he gave made me see Gindast as a demanding but not unreasonable master. Hap's complaints did not convince me he was ill treated. I formed a different opinion from his talk. My boy was in love with Svanja, and she was the real focus of his thoughts. And Fitz thinks that the reason that he's making all these mistakes is because his mind isn't on his apprenticeship. That's why he's not moving forward, getting better tasks, is because he's not focused at all. He's not trying to learn there. Hap would be more intent and perhaps better satisfied with his lessons if Svanja did not exist. A stricter father might have forbidden him to see the girl. I did not. Sometimes I thought it was because of how such restrictions had felt to me. At other times, I wondered if I feared that Hap would not obey such a command, so I dared not give it.
This really feels like he's turning into Chade in this moment, right? Like, as we said before, he did really like Molly and tried to propose, and Chade did not react super well.
Shrewd.
Sorry.
Shrewd is the one who did not react.
Oh.
Yeah, because he went to ask permission of the king for betrothal, and Shrewd is all like, yes, Celerity, it's cleared with the Duke. You can date Celerity for betrothal.
Oh, I thought...
And then Shrewd, yeah, was super mad that he meant Molly. But Patience was also like, you cannot see Molly anymore, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That was like an example from his youth of somebody forbidding him to see somebody else, and obviously he did.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's, when you're a kid in love, I guess he knows you're just gonna ignore the adults.
Right. But also, I mean, I think the adults in his life of him to think of this situation and be like, well, he would be doing better if he didn't have Svanja. And I'm sure that's how people thought about his infatuation with Molly, right? Like, he would be better at completing his tasks. He wouldn't be so wishy-washy. He would get more done if he would just forget about Molly and do what he was supposed to do. And here he is thinking, if Hap just didn't have Svanja, then he'd be great and he'd be doing his apprenticeship and exceeding expectations.
Yep, that's definitely true. And so he just doesn't forbid Hap from doing anything because he knows that Hap probably won't listen. I saw Jinna too, but coward that I was, I attempted to visit her home only when the presence of the pony and wagon indicated that her niece was likely present. I wished to slow our headlong lust, even as the simple warmth of her bed was a lure I could scarcely resist. I tried. Each time I called on her, I kept my visits brief, begging the excuse of pressing errands for my master. The first time Jinna seemed to accept that tale. The second she asked when I might expect to have an afternoon free. The third time I visited her, her niece was not home. And so Fitz is saying like, oh yeah, I tried to resist, but eventually, I couldn't. I couldn't resist at all. And when they were both spent and she was half dozing against my shoulder, I made an even more foolish mistake. Jinna, I asked her softly, do you think this is wise, what we do? Foolish, wise, what does it matter? It harms no one. Her question was asked lightly, but I answered seriously. Yes, I think it does. Matter, that is. And perhaps does harm. She heaved a heavy sigh and sat up, brushing her tousled curls from her hair, or from her face. She peered at me nearsightedly. Tom, why are you always so determined to make this a complicated matter? We are both adults. Neither of us is vowed to another, and I've promised you that you cannot get me with child. Why should not we take a simple, honest pleasure in one another while we may? Perhaps for me it feels neither simple nor honest. I struggled to make my reasons sound sensible. I do what I have taught Hap is not right to be with a woman I have not pledged myself to. Did he tell me today that he was doing with Sfanja what we have just done, I would rebuke him severely, telling him he had no right to. Tom, she interrupted me. We give our children rules to protect them. When we are grown, we know the dangers and choose for ourselves what risks we take. Neither you nor I are children. Neither of us is deceived about what is offered by the other. What danger do you fear here, Tom? I dread what Hap would think of me if he found out, and I do not like that I deceive him, doing that which I forbid him to do. I looked aside from her as I added, and I would that there was more to this than just adults taking a risk for pleasure. I see. Perhaps in time there may be, she offered, but there was an edge of hurt in her voice, and I knew then that perhaps she had deceived herself as to what we shared. What should I have replied? I don't know. I took the coward's part and said, perhaps in time there will be.
So did he just straight up to her face say, I wish we had feelings for each other?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was after she said, like, we don't have feelings, duh, we're just, two adults sharing some temporary pleasure. And Fitz is like, yeah, we don't have feelings. And she's like, oh.
Ooh, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't love this whole side bit thing happening with Jinna.
Jinna seems to be a little bit more interested in Fitz than she seems to claim, and definitely more interested than Fitz is in her.
Yes, but I don't love the framing of it because it puts Jinna as the one that's like the pursuer that's making this happen. And it like, I mean, it is a little bit that, obviously. Like, she's the one advancing on Fitz, but it's not like Fitz doesn't want, he kind of doesn't want to sleep with her, but not bad enough to not sleep with her. Like,
he wants to sleep with her, but he feels empty about doing it.
Yeah. And like, that's his own thing.
Right.
And like, I'm not saying that's wrong or right. I'm just saying that like the way it's written makes it almost feel like we're supposed to think Jinna is the bad person for continuously coming on to Fitz. But if you think about it from Jinna's point of view for even a second, he keeps sleeping with her.
Right.
So like, why wouldn't she think that he was into her too? And like, she can't read his mind. She can't see that he feels. I mean, like, he does talk with her about it. And after the first conversation, I probably would have been like, all right, so this can't happen again. But like, there is this weirdness of Fitz acting as though he has no agency in this and that he just has to sleep with her because she clearly wants him so bad. But like, she's right and that they are both adults making an adult decision.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't want to do it, he just has to say that instead of dancing around the like, oh, I don't know when I'm going to be in next. Who knows? My busy schedule.
And she just has to quietly say, well, then come when you've a mind to, Tom Badgerlock.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I do have problems with Jinna. Again, I feel like I have problems with every character. Let's be real. But I don't like some of the choices Jinna makes, but I also don't love the way her character is written in this sort of
It seems like they're on opposite ends of this. Like, right, they have a friends with benefits relationship right now. Mm-hmm. And it feels like Fitz wishes there could be more, but doesn't feel that way specifically about Jinna. And Jinna feels like she she wants to keep it just a friends with benefits. Like, this is just a friends with benefits thing. But subconsciously, she has more attachment to Fitz than she states.
Yeah.
So they're just coming at it from like exact opposite sides. They're just not compatible in
Yeah.
this relationship.
And the thing is I feel like if Fitz would just say, hey, I feel like this was really fun, but let's just stay friends, it would be awkward. But then at the end of the day, Jinna would like be chill with that.
Yeah.
Like, she seems to understand that, again, they're both adults. They're both making adult decisions. She wouldn't like get angry. I mean, maybe she'd be hurt, but like, she's not going to be like, never come to my place again.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. But also I feel like
I mean, it's also weird that like they're taking care of his son and also the horse and
I mean, yeah, you're right. There is a lot.
There's a weird like other stuff in there too.
That's true. But I don't know. But it's also weird that Fitz is like, oh, I don't want to lie to Hap about what I'm doing. First of all, why does Hap need to know what you're doing at all? You're the adult. Second of all, as though you didn't raise him with a woman coming to your home like sporadically just to sleep with you his entire childhood.
Yeah.
With no commitment to her. Like, obviously this isn't a new thing for you. This is how you act, and he knows that. So why, I don't know. It's just silliness to me.
And yet in Fitz's head, he thought he was just committed to Starling and she was to him, right? He cut it off immediately when he found out that there were other people, and Hap was like very embarrassed. Like, do you know this? Like, do you know that she's doing this? Because that's the opposite of what you've taught me all my life. So I think Hap also thought the arrangement was like, hey, they are together. They're just.
But then what's the difference in what he's doing with Jinna and what he did with Starling? That there's other women he could potentially see now, whereas Starling was the only woman that came near.
I don't know.
And to me, it's the same situation, and it's odd to me that one was okay to him to do in front of Hap, and this, which isn't in front of Hap because Hap's never around, isn't. I don't know.
I mean, he could also be feeling guilt from that relationship with Starling now that he was so deceived. It's not,
I guess,
necessarily unconnected.
That's fair.
I don't know. Lots of things going on, and he feels guilty here, leaving Jinna's place after that encounter, saying, I was cheating Jinna out of something, not but by denying her a false avowal of love, but by accommodating our attraction. I doubted that I would ever feel for her anything more than I felt right now. Worst was that I could not promise myself I would not continue to see her, even though a lusty friendship was all I could ever offer her. I did not think well of myself and felt worse as I forced myself to admit that Hap probably guessed that I now shared Jinna's bed from time to time. It was a poor example to set for my boy, and the road back to Buckkeep Castle seemed very black and cold that night.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess
I get both sides of that ending argument, right? Like, they are adults and you do set boundaries for kids that, like, when you're grown up, you can then have better judgment of what different boundaries you need, right? But you need a stricter set for kids. However, Fitz's side of it is like, I am going to teach Hap everything that I would live myself. And he feels guilty for being a hypocrite in his mind.
That's fair.
Right? Because he has a very strong sense of like morality around those things. So I don't know. He's, as we said before, he's romantic. He's an idealist and a romantic.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it just goes back to me. I don't love the whole like, well, I gotta sleep with her. There's no other choice. Like, okay, if you don't like it, stop doing it. Like, have you tried, I don't know, not doing it? And instead he's like, I just have to. She's just so beautiful and lusty, and I can't help myself but say yes every time she comes at me with kisses. And I'm like, King, then you like her at least a little bit. Like, and that's the thing, is I'm not saying that like in romantic situations you can't change your mind and say no. That like obviously consent is really big, and I feel like that is something that is important, but it doesn't feel like Fitz isn't consenting to this. Like, this isn't I don't want to say yes, I have to say yes because of the situation.
No,
this is
he's definitely consenting because he wants to sleep with her. However, he desperately wishes there was something more and feels bad because he feels like again, he needs that connection of like, I need there to be love between us for this to
Yeah.
feel good for me, and I just don't feel
Yeah.
that.
I just want to be really clear that I don't feel like this is a consent issue. And like, this is obviously a nuanced topic. So I just want to make it very clear in case it's coming across that like he can't take away consent at any time and that like I don't
No,
know.
I
Like
think it was
that's
pretty
yeah.
clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Just in case, I want to make sure that like I don't feel that this is a consent issue. I feel like he is giving an enthusiastic yes and then afterwards being like, "Oh man, I wish I could say no, but not bad enough to say no." Like it's not about he actually wants to say no. He doesn't feel comfortable saying no. I don't know. Just
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
yeah.
I think you explained yourself pretty
Good.
well. So
But anyway. So yeah, I get frustrated with his attitudes towards this, but I think that too is just my own thing. My own reading of it, my own like okay, whatever. Be a romantic about it, I guess.
but as you mentioned at the beginning, he's kind of going through it this chapter. He doesn't feel
Yes.
good about his routines that he's doing. He's incredibly busy, has a lot on his plate, and there's more on the horizon to get onto his
Yes.
plate, right? Like he needs to confront Thick at some point.
And I think that goes back to my earlier statement of he doesn't make choices. He lets choices be made for him by getting backed into a corner because he doesn't like the way that his life looks right now. And instead of doing something about that and changing what he's doing that he doesn't like, that he can control, he's just doing a bunch of things that he doesn't feel good about over and over and over again. And it's putting him into a funk. And like he could very easily just make some different choices, but it feels like he doesn't understand that he has agency because in his mind he's working for the Farseers, and so that takes away his ability to make any choices at all. And he's just very black and white in his thinking. It's very all or none for him. It's like either I can make all of my own choices or I can't make any choices at all, and that's what he's sort of falling prey to in my mind in this chapter of like I can't make a choice right now, so I'm not going to make any.
Well, that's the end of it. So if you have thoughts on the chapter, please let us know. isfitzhappy@gmail.com is where you can email us. Or if you want to reach out to us on social media, you can message on any of the platforms or comment directly on any of our posts on the platforms. You can find us at isfitzhappy at Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, YouTube, Reddit, and Facebook. I think maybe I said that one first.
You did, I think.
Okay, well, all of those. Just Google us. You can find us.
You'll figure it out.
Thanks so much for tuning in.
All right, now it's time for our favorite part.
But before we get into it, I do want to give a shout out to everybody who has supported us on Ko-fi. Of course, a big shout out to Neva, Anna, Degenhart, Zakita, and Simon. Thank you so much for your continued support. And a big shout out to Jacqueline. Thank you very much. We really appreciate everything that you have donated/tipped us.
Yes, thank you guys.
Really appreciate that. And we're going to dive into a couple comments first from Spotify. This is on episode 291, going back a little bit. So sorry, this was about 19 days ago that they posted this comment. So it's from chapter 5, Shared Sorrows. And we were talking about the blue kittens and the others and things like that. So T Tamai says, the comment on kittens and dragons made me think the blue kittens might be blue, and dead if you stretch it, due to the vicinity of dragons, so that the kittens further symbolize the abomination's deviation from dragons due to their vicinity to humans. Tinfoil hat theory, but maybe it's relevant to the conversation.
Yeah, I like it. I like the idea for sure.
Yeah, it just kind of like is a placeholder for and a reminder to the others of how far they are from kind of the natural order.
It's just the other side of the coin. I don't know. Definitely could be that. I like it. I always love a tinfoil hat theory,
Yeah.
though.
We've gotten a couple good comments about kind of that situation. So thank you very much, T Tamai. We also had a message on Reddit from Blue Weasel. And Blue Weasel wanted to talk about the pillow talk thing with Jinna from the first time that they got together. So Blue Weasel says that the thing that immediately put me off on Jinna was the pillow talk that we discussed, because it sounds like textbook fetishization, where like if you substituted a race for Fitz and Jinna said something like that, it's straight up racist,
Right.
because you're like assuming stereotypes and you're going after someone because it's just what you thought they were, and it's a trophy to be won kind of thing. So Blue Weasel's kind of on our side with that. It's just like gross the way
Yes.
that Jinna addressed that. And I definitely agree. And we kind of see that and discussed it a little bit in this chapter, but more on the Fitz is kind of wrong on his side of this relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, but I do think it was an icky, icky thing to say about someone in general, just like making it about
Hey,
how.
you're so untamed and wild. That's what it's like to be a she-wolf. Like it's
Yes.
weird.
It was gross and a weird comment, and definitely did not like that. I don't think there's any excuse.
Right. I know.
So yeah, good thought bringing it up again.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your thoughts on that.
We also had a comment on Blue Sky that was similar from Degenhart, and this was, I guess we should have said that this is in relation to episode 293.
Yeah. Yep.
And Degenhart said, sex between consenting adults, sure, no biggie, but is Fitz really fully informed in his consent? Would he have decided otherwise if he would have known that Jinna just saw him as more of a novelty than a person? Not to say that Jinna is abusing Fitz here in the strictest of terms, but it is rather uncool, I think, to use somebody as an object without them knowing you intended to do so.
Yeah, that just kind of like follows along those same lines, and it's really that, I don't know, it's just reinforcing that conversation. I'm glad that we weren't the only ones to kind of read it like that either.
Yeah. I think this chapter had something very similar in that in the consent world.
Yeah, just a slightly different side of it.
Yes, and I think consent is such a nuanced topic, but this is a good point that like in that specific instance, the first time they get together, there is that question of how much informed consent can you give if you are not aware that you're going to be treated like an object, which some people like that. And as long as you're upfront and willing to talk about that, and the other person says, yes, do that,
Right.
that's their choice and they're allowed to do that. However, that's not what happened. It was sort of an after the fact where it did feel a little bit like collecting a trophy vibes.
Yeah.
Especially in that episode. But I do think that has changed now to this episode where it's a continuous thing, a continuous choice Fitz is making.
Right. Yeah.
Where that's not being touched anymore and that hasn't been brought up again that we are aware of. And so I do feel like it is different, and why I talked more about that sort of like he's consenting to this and then being upset that he's consenting. I don't know. It's very nuanced.
But thank you, Degenhart and Blue Weasel, for that conversation.
Yeah, it's always good to talk about those things and sort of bring up how weird they are when they happen, and just I don't know that weird is the right way to frame it, but just the way that it is sort of conveyed and how we feel about it, I guess. Degenhart also had more to say on
294, the next episode.
And episode 294, they said, didn't Fitz train at Black Rolf's after the whole Stone Dragon shebang, and didn't we establish he was 20 by then?
Okay, Degenhart, I apologize. Don't specifically remember what you're commenting on from that episode. I should know it was literally 2 episodes ago. However, yes, you are correct there. He went there and spent about a year with the Old Blood afterwards and was about 20. I mean, we can make arguments for he was like 18 or something, because there's like textual evidence that he's only like 18 by the end of Assassin's Quest, but that throws off the whole 15 years later and I'm 35 thing in these books. So We won't get too far into that, but it was after the whole stone dragon thing, yes. So that is correct. Maybe it was on the no, I'd just be speculating on reasons why. I don't remember exactly. So Degenhard, if you want to let us know why you commented that. I don't remember specifically. But also thank you and shout out to Degenhard because we forgot to post on Blue Sky for that episode, and
Yes.
Degenhard made their own post.
Yes. So shout out to you. Sorry. Sometimes things slip through the cracks.
Yep.
And then finally, Degenhart had something to say about this most recent episode, 295. Yep. It could be there are no writings of Solicites because of the reasons Fitz names for not writing anything down. She was skill mistress in a time where the skill was held very tight to the crown's chest after all.
Right, yeah, that this is in reference to wanting more recent scrolls to teach Dutiful and to learn the skill from, but there's nothing from the most recent skill mistress's time. And we were talking about how those might have been sold off first, right? Because they were more recognizable. They are more easily digested. And there might be more research and translations there from older stuff that just is a lot easier to read. However, this is also another good point that where maybe not a lot of stuff was written down because Bounty, but Skill Mistress Solicity was the skill mistress during Bounty's time when he restricted the skill to being learned only by the Farseers. So maybe she stopped committing things to paper as much.
Right.
Or maybe it was like a directive to like limit the available resources and learning on the skill. Don't know.
That could be true, yeah.
It's a good point.
So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Degenhart. We always love hearing from you.
And we had a message on Facebook. This is from Ellen, and it was on episode 294. And this was part 2 of that chapter, or part 1, excuse me, of lessons. And Ellen talks about how when Dutiful is asking Fitz if he went on the journey with Verity, and we were like, oh, he's kind of disappointed in Fitz, and that's how Fitz himself reacts. Ellen is saying that they didn't quite read it like that, and it was more that Dutiful wants to know more about Verity, so wanted more details, and is disappointed that they're not able to learn the more details, not necessarily disappointed in Fitz directly for not choosing to go, right? And Ellen says, I forgot that he specifically asks what would have changed if Fitz had gone with Verity, but I see it more of as like, thinking about it rather than an accusation.
Right.
Which is an interesting perspective as well. And I think I kind of fall on the side that it's both. Like it's kind of like I would have gone with him if I was in your position. So that's kind of sad that you didn't, but I also really wanted to know more. So now this is kind of like a dead end for me.
Yeah, I definitely think there is an aspect to it of wanting that knowledge, wanting to know more, because Fitz seems so willing to talk about Verity that, like, if he went with, then he could find out what actually happened, because the only other person that he can talk to that went with is his mom, and he very clearly does not feel comfortable talking with his mom about his father.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that is a good call out, that maybe it is also something to do with the disappointment of not getting to learn more about Verity, more so than it is about disappointment in Fitz's actions or perceived actions.
Right. Thank you very much, Ellen. Appreciate that comment. And on that same line, we also had an email from a first-time writer, Anastasia, and they just recently caught up with us. So congratulations. You wrote pretty recently, actually, as well.
Yeah.
So that's awesome that you caught up so quickly. And now you have to wait every week as we publish
like everybody else.
But they also have thoughts about Dutiful's parentage.
Yes.
And kind of traits. And we've been talking recently about how, and you specifically, Emma, have called out how Fitz changes from Ketrican's son to Verity's son to my son. how Fitz
Yes.
refers to Dutiful. And Anastasia was saying that the first time through, they kind of thought the same thing as us, of just like, oh, kind of picking and choosing, who it is. They didn't really think that Fitz was the parent because he didn't take that role at all, didn't consider himself the parent. But reading through B's situation, they can see a lot of similarities in that kind of dual father, because it is, Fitz's body with Verity inside. So something must have passed. Some traits from both fathers must have gone down into Dutiful, because
Yeah.
that's kind of the situation with this world.
Yeah, and Anastasia sort of posits that potentially some of the times when Fitz says he sees something of Verity in Dutiful, whether that's his smile or the way he's acting or whatever it is, that actually is inherited from Verity. It's not just wishful thinking on Fitz's part, that Fitz isn't the father,
Right.
so to speak. And so I think that is a really good call out, that is a possibility in this world, and that a big character is directly related to two dads that
Yeah.
just have commingled their spirit, which then I guess does open the question of, does that mean a little bit Verity is B's father too? Because it seems as though people's essences stay
Right.
when they commingle, like just even if it's just a little bit. And maybe it's less so for Verity because he was in there for a short period of time and he wasn't doing anything in Fitz's, like, I mean, he was doing stuff with Fitz's body, but he wasn't like
their mind wasn't
internally
fully their bodies weren't fully melded. It was just a swap, more so.
Yeah.
Verity did ride along with Fitz's mind for a while and look through his eyes and things like that, but it was more compartmentalized. But still, there might be a little bit of Verity.
Which would also mean that there'd be a little bit of Verity in Nettle as well.
Potentially, but a lot less.
It depends on the levels of thing. Obviously,
I don't think Verity was riding along with Fitz at that point, actually. I could be wrong. I could be mistaken in the timeline.
I think he is, because he's riding along whenever Fitz gets night eyes, and that's before Nettle is born.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So,
yeah. But it would be a little bit less anyways.
I mean, yeah, it's not like he was like, whatever. I just think that there's a very clear link, especially with Anastasia's point. There's a very clear link between the commingling of Enma, or whatever whatever the term Hobb uses for the like spirit of a person with other people. It like is possible to mingle that, especially based off of magic use and sharing personhood with people and getting inside the body spiritually of another person.
It's a good call out there to say that Dutiful is both.
Yeah.
Both Verity and Fitz's kid. So, and also apologize if it's not Anastasia and it's Anastasia or something else. If you write in again, please let us know. We'll try to say it correctly. But yeah, thank you very much for writing in. It's really cool.
Thank you for showing us your wonderful pets.
Yes.
They're so cute.
7 different pets. Awesome. 2 dogs, 5 cats.
Love that. My dream life. Love
Very
it.
Cute.
All right. Well, thank you, Anastasia. And thank you to everyone who wrote in.
We have a couple comments and things on Instagram, actually, before we wrap up. One is a comment on our actual post itself, where you asked a question about what kind of prevents Fitz from being a better teacher to Dutiful.
I actually asked, why do you think Fitz doesn't acknowledge his latent talent for skilling when he first started?
There you go. That's the one.
That's the question for the last episode.
And Rhonda Grazer says it's trauma. Thanks, Galen. Which, I think that's kind of what we discussed here too, that there is something that happened there that Fitz doesn't want to acknowledge anymore.
And you know what? This is kind of crazy and maybe a tinfoil hat theory, but maybe it's a TBI.
Maybe. I mean,
because he hit his head a couple times in his life, and
fractured skull. I mean,
Yeah,
from
literally the pain
Regal's
is
Dungeons.
from a fractured skull. And not to make light of TBIs because they are very serious. I'm just saying maybe that's why his memory is a little bit jumbled and he can't really
Yeah.
recall. I mean, there's obviously a lot of magical elements and other things happening to him that also would account for the lost memory, but maybe just a fun little aside of maybe it's just head trauma, not emotional trauma.
Right.
Who knows?
Well, thank you, Rhonda, for that comment there.
And then also, Trash Mayhem also said, if you're not first, you're last in response to that question. So obviously, if you're not the best, you're the worst. So you can't accept that you were good.
True. We also had a couple messages on Instagram. One from Audrey, which is just a response to one of our memes where we had Dutiful when he's treated like every other new apprentice and he's slightly disappointed. And Dre's like, yeah, that more applies to Hap, probably. And that's true. I think both of them are kind of put out, but Hap is definitely upset.
I definitely meant to put Hap.
Okay.
I love that you're trying to like pretend like it makes sense that Dutiful's name is there. I think probably it was meant to be Hap.
Yeah. Well, it might have been also. I mean, I think they've talked at the same time.
Actually,
Dutiful's kind of put out about the wit thing, I think, which is what I associated that with. But
yeah, no, I think this is specifically whenever Fitz goes and sees Hap, and then Hap is upset that he's being treated like a new, because it's that chapter that this comes from. So yes, you are right. I messed up the names, which I do from time to time, and I did not realize. Now it's too late, and so now it'll just forever be incorrect. But
that's fine.
Thank you for catching it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Because I didn't think anything of it either, to be honest. I look at them all too. And then finally, we had a message from Verity Nettle on Instagram. Great name, very apt. It's a video of Tim Curry and the cast of the 1982 Theatre Royal Drury Lane production of Pirate of Penzance. And it's Tim Curry performing a solo number as a pirate king. And they said, this is what I think of when I think of Kenneth, which is really funny to me because Tim Curry's amazing, first of all.
Yes.
However, this number is like so over the top and goofy that I feel like this is what Sorecore wants to be.
Oh no, I think it's all Kenneth. I think this is artfully done, you know? I don't know.
Okay.
I just also am in love with
Tim Curry.
So yeah. I don't know. Maybe I just think, of course, Kenneth would want to be compared to Tim Curry. I don't know.
True. I mean, he has the charisma. He has the evil smile, if you get around to it. He plays villain well.
I will say I love you, Tim. If you're listening, hit me up. Just kidding. Luke's right there. But also... Tim, if you're listening, I love you so much, and you are so handsome to me. However, not conventionally handsome, and therefore I think cannot be Kenneth. But
gives off a good aura of Kenneth.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Love him. And he's such a good evil person. Like he just plays evil so well. I don't know. He's great.
Thank you very much for that message.
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who writes in. It's always fun to hear from you guys and see your pets or hear your ideas or get chastised because we made a mistake. We love hearing it all, and we can't wait to hear what you guys bring to us next week.